Hello, I'm Kelly McCullen. We appreciate you joining us for this Election 2022 special, where we'll hear directly from candidates seeking seats on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. The appeals courts, they call it Seat 11, is being contested by Darren Jackson and Michael Stading. They join me on stage now. Thank you, gentlemen, for participating in these judicial forums.
Thank you.
By coin flip, Mr. Stading, you get the first question, and it's because people need to know their judges. Who are you? What makes you qualified? And what made you wake up one day and said, Court of Appeals, I need to run for it?
First off, Kelly, thanks for doing this. I want to thank the Bar Association for putting this on. It gives the voters an opportunity to get to know us. Otherwise, certainly wouldn't have. I'm from a town outside of Charlotte called Mint Hill, North Carolina. Actually, 10th generation there. I met my wife in high school at Independence High School in that same town, and we didn't get married then. We waited, but we got married when I was in law school. I went to UNC Chapel Hill, got my business administration degree, undergrad degree from Keenan Flagler Business School. Went on to Campbell Law School back when it was in Bowie's Creek in Harnett County, and married my wife. We moved back to Mint Hill. We now raise 3 kids in our same hometown. The first job that I got out of law school, kind of starting with my experience to answer your question, is I went into a general practice, a small business, a small law firm, and we handled a little bit of everything. So it was kind of nice to get that. But I quickly figured out that I wanted to be in a courtroom, needed to be where the action was. So I joined the prosecutor's office in Mecklenburg County, became an assistant district attorney, and prosecuted about everything you can do in that office. Nearly 6 years in there. Tons of jury trials, tons of bench trials, motions, just about anything you could do in a DA's office. At the end of that, I decided, I did something most prosecutors don't do. I got my criminal law specialist board certification. And so that requires you to do a little extra work, but I wanted to get board certified in state criminal law, so I did that. And then it occurred to me I needed to pay for law school, needed to pay for the expenses our kids were producing. So I left and I started my own law firm and did that for approximately 6 years, primarily dealt with defense work, also did some administrative law, some civil law, and we have a local Fraternal Order Police Lodge, number 9, and I represented them. So if law enforcement needed an attorney, they would call me. And usually you're going to get those calls around 3 in the morning. It's like being on call if you're a doctor or something. So you get those calls late at night, and you've got to go somewhere and give legal advice on the fly. And 2016, I felt called to serve the country. So I went and joined the United States Air Force as an assistant staff judge advocate. And to this day, I'm a captain, and I serve at Shaw Air Force Base. Initially, you start out, you go to officer training school where you learn the military basics. And then I went to JAG school. In both those, I was in the honor flight. And then after that, I went to squadron officer school. And with that, I was in the accompanied flight. That's the groups we group off into. And that just means your family went with you. So you have some distractions. So I was not honor flight there, but I was a distinguished graduate, which is top 10% of the class. As we were discussing earlier, you do a little bit of prosecution, a little bit of defense. You advise airmen, veterans on their rights. And kind of the main job when you start, we like to call it keeping the uniform clean. So we do that. Ran for district court in 2018, won in 2019. And in the district courtroom, you see about every type of law that is appealed up to the Court of Appeals. And as part of that, I've remained very active in continuing with keeping the profession the way it should be. I'm on bar committees, truancy court judge, drug court judge, lead domestic violence court judge, and basically civil, criminal law, everything Court of Appeals handles.
All right. Mr. Jackson, your resume speaks for itself as well.
Yeah, born and raised in eastern Wake County, a small town named Knightdale. Went to public schools there. First in my family to go to college, went to UNC Chapel Hill for undergrad, and then went to Duke University School of Law for law school. Returned to eastern Wake County to practice law. Was with a small firm for 25 years. Did pretty much everything except for bankruptcy and immigration law. I have tried complex business litigation matters. I've done small claims court. I've done criminal homicide cases. I've done administrative appeals, municipal government. We were town attorney for the town of Zebulon, will caveats. Probably most importantly for this position that I currently serve in, I also did appellate work, so appeared in front of the North Carolina Court of Appeals, the North Carolina Supreme Court, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. And like I said, I did that for 25 years. Married, my wife Tina, we have 3 children. They're all 3 grown now. The youngest is in Boone at Appalachian State now. Have a grandchild, was born a couple years ago. And so, ran that small business for 25 years, made it through COVID, survived through that, and just decided it was time to do something a little different when the opportunity presented itself. Been on the Court of Appeals for about 20 months now. I've enjoyed it. I've written 110 court opinions, I think, to date, a lot of dissents, running for re-election in November, hoping to serve a full 8-year term.
How does the approach, since your campaign is really leaning on 25 years experience, smaller town, really diverse experience set, how has that affected you on the court and what you've brought to it? Do you find that you lean on it a lot, or do you find that the Court of Appeals makes you think differently in how you approach cases?
No, I think you lean on it a lot, and especially from day one. Every level of court is going to say they're a workhorse court, but the Court of Appeals, if you look at the volume and the only 15 judges on the court, we really are the workhorse court of a court system. You're getting 12 cases every 2 weeks, 4 of which you have to write an opinion in, and then if you disagree with opinions in other cases, you've got to write dissents. They're coming at you from small claims appeals to administrative agency appeals, utilities commission appeals, industrial commission appeals, murder cases, robbery, civil cases. And they're coming from you from day one. And just having that experience and knowing, what you're operating with, it just makes it a lot easier because you don't really have a lot of time. I mean, you can do research and everything, but we have time limits. You're supposed to get our cases out within 90 days. And in 2 weeks, you're getting another 12 cases. And in 2 weeks, you're getting another 12 cases. And so I think having that experience has been very, very beneficial.
Mr. Stading, looking into your background, you seem to have deep experience, military, Mecklenburg County, almost a laser focus. I may be reading that wrong. How does that make you better prepared or well prepared to join the Court of Appeals if the voters have that decision to make?
Well, certainly no stranger to having a large volume of work in our court system, tons of cases pushing through. Just earlier this week, I was in first appearance court. We started early, ended late, took no lunch break. And like I said, that's criminal court, which is a large volume of the caseload at the Court of Appeals. And then we also end up in civil court. As district court judges, sometimes we get those jury trials, and then we have different issues thrown at us, and you got to know the law. And if you don't know it, you got to figure it out quickly because more cases are coming at you, just like that. And same thing at the Air Force Base. We could get any given issue, having to advise a commander at any given moment. And I can tell you right now, we had no shortage of work at the base there. So completely used to that workload.
You're on the outside of the Court of Appeals looking in, and you chose to run. You want that seat.
Correct.
In your opinion, how well is the court functioning? What is it you see about the operation of that court that you believe you can make better?
So, the job of a judge is going to be fixed, and they better be intellectually and honest about it. And that's that they better know the facts, they better know the record of appeal, and then they better know the law and how to apply that to that and be honest and fair about that and come out and render their decision that is just. So the job doesn't change. But there's always processes we can make better and improve upon, no matter what we're doing in life. In Mecklenburg County, I do that all the time. If I see or in a court system and I'm in a particular courtroom, things aren't running the way they need to run to function, I always contact my chief and I say, hey, let's think about changing something here and move it around. And she always listens, and we take care of that process. And we're trained in the military to do that. When we see adversity, when we see something that needs to be corrected, to take that leadership role and then make those changes with the process to make it more efficient and more fair.
You're on the court. It may not be fair to ask you that question. So in the generic sense, how can a voter, you can speak to the Court of Appeals, but in general, how can a voter know their court, this court, is operating the way it should for me as a citizen?
I think they could make that decision for themselves based on, do you understand what the court did? Was it transparent how it came to its decision? Was it predictable? I mean, that's what lawyers look for, right? When they look for cases, they look for a fair reading of the law. And I think the general public knew that as well. There are a lot of steps that the court system has taken in the last several years, whether it was things that were happening before COVID or because of COVID. You know, all our oral arguments are now online, so you can follow at home. We used to have this program, we still do. We travel around to each of the law schools so that law students can see the court in action. Well, that used to be necessary because they'd have to come to Raleigh if they wanted to see that otherwise. Now they can watch it on YouTube, and they can see it for themselves, as can every voter in this state. You know, that was one of the benefits of updating our systems to network and everything because of COVID, is now we can do oral argument online. So if there's a lawyer in Cherokee, North Carolina, who's doing a nonviolent criminal appeal, maybe it's not cost effective to pay that person to drive to Raleigh, spend the night, and argue their appeal. So now we can do it by WebEx. That's good for that attorney. It's good for the client who's paying that attorney. It's good for the system, for people to realize that they can get justice even if they can't afford to get to Raleigh. So, you know, there's always improvements you can make, but I'm very happy how easy it is for the online public to find decisions from the court. So now it's up to me to write decisions that are easy for a layperson to read and understand, and so you don't have to have a law degree to understand what the law is necessarily.
Mr. Stading, I want to ask you about party affiliation and how this works with the judgeship. If I'm a voter, and you know, if you watch MSNBC, Fox News, you know how you get your flavors of news. Should we assume how a judge is going to act based on a partisan affiliation?
Absolutely not.
And what does party mean to you in relation to your service on the bench, and if you get on the Court of Appeals?
So
30 seconds.
There's politics outside the courtroom. There's politics inside the courtroom. They have absolutely no business whatsoever in the courtroom. I would hate to think that any judge walks into a courthouse or into their courtroom ever thinking, I'm going to be the best Republican or Democrat today. They better go in there thinking that I'm going to be the fairest, most honest judge in here today, and I'm going to give everybody a fair shot, treat them the way they deserve to be treated, and make sure that they walk out of the courtroom feeling like they had a fair and just result.
Mr. Jackson, your thoughts on that? You've worn the service hat in a lot of different ways, right. Partisan, nonpartisan.
I agree with that. You know, I've always been against judges being partisan in nature. I wish they were nonpartisan offices. If I had my choice and I could run every time, I would be an unaffiliated, just because I don't think politics has a purpose in our courtrooms. But all you can do is try to put that aside. And judges shouldn't care what the decision is, right? Who wins or who loses. That's not our job. Our job is to be the umpire, call the balls and the strikes, not to care who wins or loses. That's how I try to approach every case. That's why, you know, in my campaign, I've been endorsed by both the plaintiff's bar and the defense bar, because I think I call them like I see them, and I think that's what people want from their judges.
And by coin flip, that's the last word. Darren Jackson Michael Stading, thank you so much for your time, making the trip to the studio to keep our voters informed. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.